When three armed men burst into First National Bank, everyone expected the security guard to hide behind his desk. Instead, Marcus Thompson moved like someone who had done this before, because he had for 15 years with the FBI.
Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and a comment before we start to learn more about what happened.
The morning sun cast long shadows through the plate glass windows of First National Bank in downtown Charlotte, North Carolina. At 9:15 a.m., the bank hummed with typical Tuesday activity. Customers waiting in line for tellers, business owners making deposits, and the quiet clicking of keyboards as loan officers processed applications. Behind the security desk near the entrance, Marcus Thompson sat reading what appeared to be a newspaper, his reading glasses perched on the edge of his nose. At 62, Marcus had the kind of presence that people noticed without quite understanding why. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair kept in a precise cut that suggested military discipline. His security uniform was always pressed, his shoes polished to a mirror shine, and his posture spoke of decades of training that had nothing to do with watching bank lobbies. The employees at First National knew Marcus as the quiet security guard who had worked there for 2 years. He was polite but not chatty, professional but not social. During slow periods, he read what looked like newspapers and magazines, occasionally taking notes in a small notebook he kept in his shirt pocket. Most people assumed he was working crossword puzzles or reading sports scores. They were wrong on both counts. What Marcus was actually reading were FBI tactical journals, case studies from the Bureau's training division, and security analyses that he still received through professional networks he had built over a 20-year career in federal law enforcement. The notebook contained observations about the bank's security vulnerabilities, behavioral patterns of customers and staff, and tactical assessments that had become second nature after 2 decades of protecting people from the worst humanity had to offer. Marcus had retired from the FBI 18 months earlier, not because he wanted to, but because a bullet wound to his left shoulder during a hostage situation in Miami had left him with limited range of motion. The Bureau's medical board had declared him unfit for field duty, and desk work had nearly driven him to madness. When his wife Denise suggested he find something to keep busy, the security job at First National had seemed like a reasonable way to stay engaged without the life-and-death pressure he had known for most of his adult life. What he hadn't expected was how much he would miss the adrenaline, the purpose, the sense that his skills and experience mattered. Sitting behind a desk watching people make deposits felt like using a Ferrari to deliver pizza. But the pay was decent, the hours were regular, and it gave him structure during retirement. That was all about to change. At 10:47 a.m., Marcus noticed them before they even reached the parking lot. 3 men in dark clothing approaching the bank in a formation that was too deliberate, too coordinated to be casual. The lead man kept his right hand near his waistband, a telltale sign that Marcus had learned to recognize in his first year with the Bureau. The second man scanned the surroundings with the systematic pattern of someone conducting surveillance. The third stayed slightly behind, positioned to watch their exit route. Marcus folded his newspaper and casually reached for his radio, but before he could call it in, the front door exploded open. "Everyone on the ground! This is a robbery!" The lead gunman was young, maybe mid-20s, with a bandana covering the lower half of his face and a semi-automatic pistol in his right hand. His 2 companions followed immediately behind, both armed, both moving with the aggressive confidence of people who believed they controlled the situation. The bank lobby erupted into chaos. Customers screamed and dropped to the floor. Tellers stepped back from their windows with their hands raised, and the bank manager emerged from his office looking pale and terrified. Everyone expected the security guard to hit the panic button and duck behind his desk. Instead, Marcus Thompson stood up. 20 years of FBI training doesn't disappear just because you change uniforms. Marcus assessed the situation in the 3 seconds it took the robbers to fan out across the lobby. Three subjects, all armed with handguns, positioned in a basic tactical formation, but with amateur spacing that left them vulnerable to crossfire. The lead gunman was holding his weapon incorrectly, finger on the trigger instead of alongside it, suggesting high stress and poor training. The second gunman kept looking toward the exit, indicating he was nervous and might be the first to break if pressure was applied. Most importantly, none of them had identified Marcus as a threat. To them, he was just another minimum wage employee in a uniform, someone to control rather than neutralize. That was their first mistake. You, the lead gunman pointed his weapon at Marcus. Get on the ground with everyone else. Marcus raised his hand slowly, his voice calm and steady. Easy there, son. No need for anyone to get hurt. I said, get down. Marcus took a half step forward instead of back, a movement so subtle that the gunmen didn't register it as non-compliance. But he was now positioned with a clear line of movement to the nearest gunman and partial cover behind a support pillar. Sir, Marcus said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that came from years of talking armed suspects into surrender. You don't want to do this. You walk out of here right now, and maybe this ends differently. The lead gunman's eyes narrowed. Something about Marcus's tone, his posture, his complete lack of fear was wrong. This wasn't how security guards were supposed to respond. Who the hell do you think you are? Marcus didn't answer directly. Instead, he continued his psychological assessment. The leader was trying to maintain control, but was clearly rattled by encountering resistance he hadn't expected. His grip on the weapon had tightened, and his breathing had become more rapid. Classic signs of escalating stress that could lead to poor decision-making. I think I'm someone who's seen this movie before, Marcus said quietly, and I know how it ends. That's when the second gunman made their second mistake. Distracted by the unexpected exchange between his partner and the security guard, he turned his attention away from the tellers and customers he was supposed to be controlling. Marcus moved. 15 years of FBI tactical training compressed into 2 seconds of fluid motion. Marcus stepped left, using the support pillar for cover, while simultaneously rushing the nearest gunman. His right hand struck the weapon, forcing it away from any potential victims, while his left hand drove into the gunman's solar plexus, doubling him over. In a continuation of the same movement, Marcus wrapped his arm around the gunman's throat and used him as a human shield while reaching for the dropped weapon. The entire sequence happened so fast that most people in the bank didn't understand what they had witnessed. One moment there was a security guard standing near his desk. The next moment there was a trained federal agent holding a gun and a hostage. "Drop your weapons," Marcus commanded, his voice now carrying the full authority of 20 years in law enforcement. FBI! The remaining 2 gunmen froze, their weapons still drawn but their confidence completely shattered. They had planned for resistance from law enforcement, but not from inside the bank, and definitely not from someone with Marcus's level of skill and experience. "You're not FBI," the lead gunman said, but his voice lacked conviction. "You're just a security guard." Marcus smiled grimly. Former FBI, Special Agent Marcus Thompson, retired. 20 years with the Bureau, 15 in the field, specializing in bank robbery and violent crime. And right now, you gentlemen are looking at federal charges that will put you away for the next 25 to 30 years. The psychology of the situation had completely reversed. 60 seconds earlier, the gunman had controlled the bank through fear and intimidation. Now they were facing someone who not only wasn't afraid of them, but who possessed tactical skills they couldn't match and legal knowledge they couldn't challenge. "You're bluffing," the second gunman said, but he was already lowering his weapon. "Am I?" Marcus asked. "Let's see. Armed bank robbery is a federal crime under 18 U.S.C. 2113. With 3 perpetrators and firearms involved, you're looking at a mandatory minimum of 25 years without parole." Add in the fact that you terrorized civilians, and I count at least 15 potential victims. That's another 5 to 10 years per count. Your best-case scenario right now is spending the rest of your productive adult lives in federal prison. The legal accuracy of his statement, delivered with the casual confidence of someone who had testified in hundreds of federal cases, had its intended effect. The gunmen exchanged uncertain glances. But, Marcus continued, maintaining his tactical advantage while offering them a psychological exit, if you put down your weapons right now, cooperate fully, and nobody gets hurt, I can make sure the federal prosecutor knows you made the smart choice when it mattered. Marcus could see the internal struggle playing out on their faces. They had entered the bank with a plan, but the plan had assumed they would face minimal resistance. Now they were dealing with a professional who not only outmatched them tactically, but who understood the legal system well enough to offer them a realistic assessment of their options. The second gunman was the first to break. He slowly placed his weapon on the floor and raised his hands. "Smart choice," Marcus said. "Now you," he addressed the leader. "What's it going to be?" For a moment, it seemed like the lead gunman might try to salvage the situation through escalation. His grip tightened on his weapon, and Marcus could see him calculating whether he could take a shot before Marcus could respond. But Marcus had seen that look before, in dozens of standoffs over the years. He knew exactly when someone was about to make a bad decision, and he was ready. "Son," Marcus said, his voice softening slightly, "I've been exactly where you are right now, desperate, backed into a corner, thinking that violence is the only way out. But it's not. You make the right choice here, and you get to see your family again someday. You make the wrong choice, and this ends badly for everyone." The gunman's hand trembled slightly. Marcus could see the moment when survival instinct overrode desperation. The weapon clattered to the floor. "On the ground, all of you," Marcus commanded. "Hands behind your heads, fingers interlaced." As the three would-be robbers complied, Marcus quickly secured their weapons while maintaining visual control of all three subjects. Only then did he reach for his radio to call for police backup, though he knew they would arrive to find the situation already resolved. The bank lobby, which had been filled with terror just minutes earlier, began to return to something approaching normal. Customers slowly stood up, tellers emerged from behind their bulletproof glass, and the bank manager approached Marcus with an expression of utter bewilderment. "Marcus," the manager said, his voice shaking slightly, "what just happened? How did you... where did you learn to do that?" Marcus checked the restraints on the gunmen one more time before answering. "Federal Bureau of Investigation, Tom. Special agent for 20 years before I took this job." "FBI?" Tom repeated, as if the words didn't make sense. "But you're our security guard. You read newspapers and drink coffee and I'm also a trained federal law enforcement officer with extensive experience in violent crime prevention," Marcus finished. "The two things aren't mutually exclusive." Within 10 minutes, the bank was swarming with Charlotte Mecklenburg police, FBI agents from the local field office, and enough emergency vehicles to handle a major incident. Marcus found himself in the unusual position of being both the primary witness and the arresting officer, technically speaking, though he no longer had federal authority. Special Agent Lisa Rodriguez, whom Marcus recognized from interagency meetings during his active duty, approached him with a mixture of professional respect and personal curiosity. "Marcus Thompson," she said, extending her hand. "I heard you'd retired, but I didn't know you'd gone into private security." "It keeps me busy," Marcus replied, though I wasn't expecting quite this much excitement. Agent Rodriguez glanced at the three suspects, now in police custody and being read their Miranda rights. "Walk me through what happened." For the next hour, Marcus provided a detailed tactical debriefing that impressed even the active federal agents. His observations about the suspect's behavior, His assessment of their skill level and planning, and his psychological evaluation of their decision-making process read like a textbook example of professional law enforcement work. "You know," Agent Rodriguez said when the formal interview was complete, "the Charlotte field office has been looking for an experienced agent to work with our bank robbery task force, someone with your background and tactical experience. The position would be civilian, but it would put your skills to better use than watching lobby traffic." Marcus considered the offer. After 2 years of retirement, he had begun to accept that his law enforcement career was over. But today had reminded him not just of what he was capable of, but of how much he missed the sense of purpose that came from protecting people. "I'll think about it," he said. Later that afternoon, after the FBI agents had left and the bank had closed early to allow employees to recover from the morning's events, Marcus sat at his security desk, completing his incident report. The other employees approached him throughout the day, their perception of him completely transformed. Sarah, one of the tellers who had been working during the robbery, stopped by his desk as she prepared to leave. "Marcus," she said, "I just wanted to thank you. If you hadn't been here today—" "You don't need to thank me, Sarah. It's what anyone would have done." She shook her head. "No, it's not. It's what someone with your training and experience would do. We just never knew who you really were." After Sarah left, Marcus sat alone in the quiet bank, reflecting on the day's events. For 2 years, he had been content to let people see only the surface. A retired man in a security uniform, passing time until full retirement. It had been easier than explaining his background, simpler than dealing with people's changed expectations once they knew about his FBI career. But today had shown him something important. His skills, his experience, his ability to protect people. None of that had disappeared when he turned in his federal badge. Those abilities were part of who he was, not just what he used to do. His phone buzzed with a text message from his wife. "Saw the news. Are you okay?" Marcus typed back, "I'm fine, and I think I might have found my next career move." The next morning, Marcus arrived at the bank to find a small crowd of reporters waiting outside, along with several law enforcement officials who wanted to commend him for his actions. But the moment that mattered most came when Tom, the bank manager, approached him with a serious expression. "Marcus, I owe you an apology. We hired you as a security guard, but we never asked about your qualifications beyond the basic requirements. We assumed, well, we made assumptions that weren't fair to you or to us." "No apology necessary, Tom. Actually, there is. Because if we had known about your background, we could have utilized your expertise in so many ways: security assessments, employee training, threat evaluation. We wasted 2 years of your knowledge because we didn't think to ask." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "That's something a lot of organizations struggle with. They see someone in a particular role and assume that's all they're capable of. How do we do better? You ask questions. You look deeper. You remember that everyone has a story, and that story might include capabilities you never expected." That afternoon, Marcus called Agent Rodriguez and accepted the position with the FBI's bank robbery task force. It wasn't the same as being a field agent, but it was a chance to use his skills and experience in service of something larger than himself. 6 months later, Marcus was conducting training seminars for bank security personnel across the southeastern United States, sharing both his tactical expertise and his insights about recognizing and developing the hidden talents within any organization. The bank robbery that morning had lasted less than 5 minutes, but it had changed everything. Not just for Marcus, but for everyone who witnessed what happened when assumptions collide with reality, when expertise emerges from unexpected places, and when someone's true capabilities are finally revealed. True strength isn't always visible on the surface. Sometimes it sits quietly behind a desk, reading what looks like a newspaper, waiting patiently for the moment when all that hidden experience and training becomes exactly what the world needs.